be talking about GEO. This really is a foundational, like entry level conversation around it. Some of you are probably well versed in it. Some of you might be like, what the heck is GEO? But we're going to go into some of that. And then, as John was asking me earlier, I am going to be teaching a two-part, like workshop style masterclass where we're going to go like in depth on optimizing profiles and kind of formatting some of your content specifically. Um, but anyways, I would love in the chat if you guys want to drop in, like, where are you joining from? Hi, Christy. Hi, Julie, Michael. I know where a lot of you all are, but yeah, I would love for this to be engaging. So drop in the chat. And then New Orleans, that's awesome. Very cool. Awesome. Okay, well, I'm going to get started. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Katie Shive. In simply put, I love personal branding. I've been in the mortgage space for almost a decade, helping teams prior to what I'm currently doing. I've been at Guild, helped Shayla Gifford and her team, supported about 50 loan officers with personal branding, strategy, copy, content, social media, events, all the things. I've pretty much probably touched it in some capacity. And then about 2 years ago, I decided to take a couple months off between having my kids, and now I am working for myself and doing all things like AI. So probably how you may have heard about me is my connection with Scott. He is a dear friend of mine, and I am a huge believer in Housing Link. Side note, really quick, I was trying to get Housing Link when it was Lender Launchpad into Guild at an enterprise level back in 21. As a strategist, I literally saw how awesome the product was. This was like 4 years ago, before it is what it is today. And I was like, every loan officer needs to be using this. It's just a fantastic tool. So I'm really here largely a part of Scott. So thank you for having me also, Scott. Okay, so let's just dive in. Let me start by asking you guys a question. When you guys are searching for information, I'm talking to you personally, when you're searching for information today, how are you going to look for information? Like, what is your default? Are you going to social media? Are you going to Google? Are you going to AI? Are you texting people? Like I think the answer is probably going to be obvious if this is a softball, but how are you guys looking for information? Google and chat, AI. Yep. Okay, so the data is like largely just coming out that the trends and the patterns for consumer search is radically changing very fast. I don't know that any of us on this call anticipated AI to be as disruptive and as fast as it has been, although I think it's only going to just accelerate even more. So, what we're finding is that when people are searching, they're now more likely by default starting to go to places like Gemini, ChatGPT, Perplexity, and they're asking questions. You're also probably noticing that even inside your major search engine like Google itself, when you ask a question or you're searching for something, the very top thing that pops up is the AI generated response and then your links below. So it's a bit like the Wild West at the moment and how patterns are shifting. But why we're all on this call is we want to make sure that AI is referring us. And here's a cool story. I literally was on a coaching call with a loan officer on Tuesday. They're out of Nevada. And I was going around the horn with their team and I was like, please give me your wins. What's your wins for the week? And he's a loan officer, been in the industry for probably 30 years. And he said, my client, I'm in contract with them. We're closing next week. It was a save the deal. And the client found him from ChatGPT. So the client, apparently, I don't know the full story, but the client had a higher rate, was searching about rates and something, on ChatGPT. His bank came up. Then he went to LinkedIn and looked up this specific loan officer on his LinkedIn profile, read some of his content that he had been recently posting, called the loan officer. He was able to get a lower rate, save the deal, and he's closing next week. So that is like a real story as of like 2 days ago on how he was literally found and referred by ChatGPT and is closing a deal. So that gives me hope because that's what we all want. Okay, so when we just break down some of the some of the data, I think it's important to frame part of the story. So, if any of you guys on this call listen or read the recent survey from Realtor.com? I believe it was published last week or like within the last 10 days. It's a Realtor.com report. They surveyed a bunch of prospective buyers, people that are actively trying to buy a home right now. They surveyed them back in August, so it's still pretty fresh. And they found that 82% reported that they're using AI for their real estate insights. I don't think this is going to be surprising to anybody. What was also surprising is that they said that 61% believe that AI makes them smarter about the market. Now, what should also concern us is they said only 62% said they believe that their realtor helps make them smarter. So, literally, there's a 1% margin, like with the different questions asking about, like, do you think your realtor is making you smarter or your AI? Now, I know that's for realtors, but as mortgage professionals, we're really lumped in that similar category and we're probably close behind that. So, we want to make sure that we're staying in front of our clients online. All right. And then the last thing is that 32% are using AI to compare lender reviews. So that means that they're going to AI and they're asking, hey, between lender A and lender B in my zip code or whatever the exact query is, please compare the two based on reviews alone. So that's also a really critical point for GEO. All right, now looking at some higher level, just AI research trends. AI search traffic has grown 970% in the last year. And just for reference, you guys, I do have these all cited down below. So if you're wanting any of these specific references, I'm happy to provide that after the call. Okay, 67% are among platforms. ChatGPT is the most dominated platform that's used. Gemini was, I believe, 54%, and then Perplexity. So really the top three that are being used the most is ChatGPT with Gemini and Perplexity. And then the last thing to note is that of all the citations that are being used, 21.74% were user generated content. So, user generated content is massively on the rise. This is why tools like blogs, LinkedIn posts, housing link pages, presentations, this is all going to be more and more critical for you putting content out there. I'm reading a book right now by Mark Schaefer, and it's all about looking at consumer behavior with AI specifically. And it's really cool to see, like he had mentioned, and I thought this was a really good example for the example that he used was a diaper company. If you think of Huggies or Pampers, they're not marketing to the baby that's actually using the product, right? Like that should be a no duh. They're marketing to the parents who are buying the diapers for their child. So if we think of it in a similar context, a lot of what our content is doing, yes, we want it to get in front of the eyeballs of our clients. That is a given. But that added layer now with AI is that we are marketing ourselves to AI. We have to be taking our content has to be training these LLMs to be saying, okay, so when somebody searches, please tell me a loan officer in Massachusetts or who's the best loan officer in Nashville, we want it to be pulling up your name, or we want your name to be cited in, that top 5 referral source, right? So that's the goal with what we're doing here. Okay. It's pretty obvious by now that AI is the new digital front door, and it is your first impression. As I stated in that example, when the loan officer that I was sharing, his client went to ChatGPT and was asking, specific questions. Before he ever picked up the phone and called that loan officer, he got referrals based from ChatGPT. So, what your content, whether it shows up or doesn't show up, that is now serving as really your digital first impression. So if AI is the new gatekeeper, how do we get through the front door? Well, we want to teach the machines to trust you. All right, GEO. Do you guys know, do you guys have a general understanding of what GEO is? Do you guys, let me start by asking you, you can put this in the chat, just yes or no, but do you know what SEO is? Have you guys heard of SEO? Yes, no, yeah, LLM. Okay. I love it's sounding like alphabet soup. It's AI, LLM, GEO, SEO, LMNOP. But GEO is generative engine optimization. And really in like layman's terms, it's just the practice of optimizing your content so tools like AI can surface you as the trusted answer. So we're providing content to the LLM so they know anytime somebody asks for a local lender. Kelly, I don't know where you're located, but who are the top lenders in, I'm going to just pretend you're in Main Street, USA, and you have content up there, we want your stuff to rank. So when we think of SEO in comparison to GEO, SEO is much more shallow. In the past, we've relied on SEO by priming our websites with keywords. You can pay lots of money to be optimized up to the top. And you're hoping that if you're in the top 1 to 3 links, people are going to click on that. Now, SEO is not dead, but as we stated in the beginning, people are more and more going directly to AI to ask questions and answers than they are just straight going to Google. So GEO is much deeper. It's more what you'll hear maybe the phrase semantic. So instead of asking, 3 tips to build credit with generic info like pay my bills on time and having a link, right? GEO is more rewarding, for lack of better words, if your content there's depth and substance to it. So for example, on that same core idea would be how to build credit as a first-time home buyer and what lenders are actually looking for. Now, the nuance in the titles, it's a little deeper, but then you're drilling down into that same core idea of, okay, what scores do lenders need? How do rent and utility history help? What's the difference between a Vantage score and a FICO score? And then, adding in layers of storytelling from clients that you've actually helped improve their credit. Now, in that one piece of content, you've provided much more value in like actually how to solve that problem rather than a really short phrase of like, here's how to do this. So AI views that content as rich, trustworthy, and site-worthy. And we'll get into in a little bit further on like some tips on how to create that kind of content. Okay, so when we talk about how does AI know to refer you, there's a lot that goes into that, but in short, high level, first of all, we have to create signals. Signals would be different types of content and in different platforms across the internet. So, do you have reviews? Most of us on this page, we probably have reviews, right? Whether your company has experience.com, maybe you have a Zillow account. Ideally, it'd be awesome if you have a Google business page. But in some capacity, what would you guys say that you have a method for collecting online reviews? Okay. Second would be looking at your website. Now, I know a lot of loan officers, we don't have our own fancy websites. There's a lot that goes into maintaining that. The cool part is you have tools like Housing Link, and now, there's kind of other shortcuts around that directly. But things like your bio. So if you have a YouTube channel, if you have a LinkedIn profile, your company website, Instagram, we want to make sure that across all of the platforms that you have direct control to update, that your bios are going to be consistent. Same thing with social media, and then third-party profiles, affiliates. Okay, so the next thing is Google structures those signals. So now Google takes all of the different places that your name might be appearing and it turns them into measurable data. So going back to reviews, for example, it might look at Christy and say, okay, Christy is with X company and she has 10 reviews and the average is 4.8. Now, if we're going to compare another title rep in her same zip code. Well, the other one only has 3 reviews and they're not as strong. So now it's measuring that data. The third part is that AI models read web. So ChatGPT, Gemini, and Perplexity, they're pulling from public signals to decide who's credible. So I wish it were just as easy as if we put one post up and we're like, we're the bomb.com, use us. But we don't want that. We actually want to earn our reputation and we want to earn the credibility. Like that helps all of us. So when you have things, content spread out, AI is like recording that, measuring it, and it's reading all of that content across the web. And then reputation becomes AI memory. So the more consistent and trusted your signals are, the more likely AI is to recommend or cite you. So this is where having a content strategy, a consistent content strategy is important. So kind of think about it as the first part is we want to make sure that your profiles are current, they're up to date, they're clear and accurate. But then we want to make sure that we're putting consistent content out there so that anytime somebody is searching for a specific question that might match with what you do, AI is like, oh, yes, that person, I'm going to refer them because they're consistently building content and answering questions around this topic. So we're measuring them as that they have credibility. It would be hard to say that you're an expert in down payment assistant if you've only been a loan officer for 3 days and you've never closed a loan, but you wrote a blog post about it. Now, if you've been a loan officer for X amount of time and that's like your niche and you do this all day long and you work with first-time home buyers and you have content and you're talking about it, now AI is like, oh, that person has credibility because they're consistent, they're relevant, and they add context. And then the last thing is visibility compounds. So when AI features you in results, it drives traffic back to your profiles, reinforcing that loop. So think of it as this loop that it's continuing, like you're feeding it, it's feeding back to you, and it's this back and forth thing. Okay, so kind of drilling down a little bit more on what are reputation signals. So this is going a little bit deeper. So looking at your Google business profile. I would love to know in the chat, do you guys have a Google business profile? Maybe your company manages it for you, which is okay. Yes. Okay, great. And that's like, most, if you're with a broker, usually you manage that yourself. But if you're with a larger company, usually they like to control that. Cool. You don't, but you can. So let's talk. We'll talk on that. Okay. So Google My Business Profile. That's one of the first places that you guys want to make sure that you're optimized. Again, it's a little bit trickier if your company owns the keys to that. There's probably ways that you could work with your marketing department to make sure if there's any inaccuracies or anything that you want to tweak. I don't know what your internal process is, but wanting to make sure you get consistency. And this is a side note, if you guys don't have a system for asking for reviews, you guys really need to take advantage of this. Now, reviews are not the end all be all, but they are weighted very heavily by Google, especially if they're through your Google reviews. But GEO or the LLMs, they do pull from third-party aggregates like experience.com and Zillow. So when it's just a side-by-side profile, one of the weightiness metrics is, do they have reviews? And the best time to ask for reviews is when you're either in contract or right when they've closed and they're happiest. So make sure if you're not doing that, that's like one low-hanging fruit that you guys can be building into your business right now is like, I need to get better about asking for reviews. One, it will make you feel good, it makes you look good, and AI likes it. Okay, the next thing is your website, and which I spelled wrong, and your social content. So again, going back, making sure your bios are correct, that it reflects your tone, making sure, one of the things, I was on a call recently and we were doing an audit for this guy, like a live example audit. And he was like, Cool. It did pull me up, but I left that company more than 6 months ago. And so I'm not even at that company. I was like, okay, well, I don't have an exact fix for you because that site, that page from that other company is still being referenced or indexed for some reason. But I said, here's what you need to do is now you need to like start creating content and really intentionally trying to make some changes so that when it references you, it's not referencing an old company. Now, he probably could email the company. I don't know what the examples would be, but you want to make sure your content is consistent. And then again, if you can get on podcasts or if you can, be mentioned by somebody else's blog or, maybe, in the industry, like you guys can collaborate. So if any of you guys are writing content and you're like, hey, can I do like a quick interview and go reference talk to your realtors and say, hey, I'm writing an idea or a post about this, can you what's your thought on this, and then go tag your referral partner or maybe tag your title rep or somebody that helps do your inspections or like a third party partner that you work with. But again, if you can backlink out to somebody else's website, or if you can, maybe one of your posts you're talking about, the recent article that I just referenced on realtor.com. Hey, I just read this article and this was really fascinating for me. Now go actually link that article in that post, and that puts a signal of authority back in that you're not just talking out your side cheek, you're actually pulling in credible outside resources. That will also help you. And then looking at engagement metrics. Oh, thank you, John. It proves that I'm human. Yes, occasionally I will actually leave in misspelling because I do create all of these posts myself. I don't generate these. Okay, now let's talk about how AI ranks your content. First of all, I want to ask, when it comes to creating content, does anybody else feel overwhelmed by the sheer idea that you have to create consistent content? Like anybody else, like, oh my gosh, I'm just trying to like serve my clients, put out fires, manage my team, try to have like, a family home life, not eat like garbage food all the time, maybe get to the gym or get on a walk 1 or 2 days a week. And now, by the way, I have to be a freaking content creator. Anybody else feel that? I feel that every day. And it's like this constant grind. So, a couple things, and I'm going to break down a pretty simple system of like what I'm personally doing and what I'm coaching to create content, that when you get a system, it makes it easier. I'm never going to be one to tell you like, oh, it's just it's so easy to create content. You just have to do, X, Y, and Z and sham wow. Like if it were easy, we all know everybody would be doing it. I think what I hope you guys take away today is a couple small tweaks that you can do to start implementing, and then know that you just have to have a strategy and that builds over time. Okay, so when you're creating content, one of the things you really want to make sure that it solves is clarity. Now, you guys, you're probably going to be like, this is no duh stuff. It really is. Now, if you're writing a content piece, whether it's a blog post or a caption or whatever, and it's like jargon and technical, like we all might understand that because it's industry speak, but your client, your audience isn't. And AI really favors things that are clear and easy to understand. So, for example, like 3 types of credit scores, right? So, again, we want to make sure that, I kind of always default to like, hey, can you write? I don't know if any of you guys do this, but like, can you write at like an 8th grade, 9th grade level? Like, don't overcomplicate what we're trying to say. Here is a great example. There's a loan officer that I follow his content. He's an amazing loan officer. Like he's super talented, been doing it a long time. And he writes his posts and like they're so technical. Like it's like, hey, just close. And I get this strategy that he's trying to do. And what he's trying to do is basically show, more to his business partners, like here's how we, close this really hard loan. But I poked some fun at him obviously we're friends, so I was able to do that. But I poked some fun at him. So he had this really technical like response. And then I literally, and his hashtag was something like, I didn't use AI or something like that. And so I took this post and I actually ran it through AI and I said, can you please interpret what this post means? Act like I'm an eighth grader and I have never like bought a house before. Can you please interpret this post for me? And so it spit out the same post, but in like super layman's terms, like it watered it down. And I was like, oh, that's a really great explanation. I actually know what he just did. So I took that output and I posted it in the comment and I said, for all of us that are not loan officers and have no clue what you're talking about, here is what I think you mean. Hashtag used AI. And again, it was playful and completely in jest, but we want to make sure that our content is clear. Okay, again, reinforcing depth. So when you're thinking of content, sometimes, like I've been exploring long form content. I don't know if any of you follow me on LinkedIn or any of my other channels, but you might be like, dang, she writes a lot. One, I write frequently, but I also write longer. And here's why. I'm not expecting my audience to necessarily read the 1,500 words that I post. But going back to the diaper example, I understand now that the audience that I am writing content for isn't just the consumer that's reading it, but I'm also serving AI as my second audience. So I'm strategic in the content that I'm writing because I want every piece of content that I create to get as much mileage. I don't want to work harder and I don't want to be a content generating factory. So if I'm going to get one post, I want to get as much juice out of the squeeze as possible. So and I'll get into some examples, but when we're writing content, I will say something like in my prompt, like, please help me write, a GE optimized long form post, make it between, 1,200 to 1,500 words, right? And that's kind of that ideal length that you're allowed, like it's going to be more possible to go deep into a topic than like 300 to 500 words. Recency. Your content needs to be consistent, right? So if all AI has on a search for you is like 5 YouTube videos that you did 4 years ago, like it might pull that, but it's probably going to favor somebody else that is talking about a similar subject if their video was recorded, I don't know, a month ago or even a year ago compared to this video. Because AI is going to look at it and go, side by side, this one's more recent, which means it's probably more relevant, right? So we want to make sure that our content is being, consistent and updated. And then the last thing that's really, really important, you guys, is making sure that your content is public and accessible. This is going to be an obvious answer, but AI is not crawling emails, right? So if your only content that you're sending out every single week is an email newsletter to your referral partners or your clients, you're not getting any credit for that, no matter how awesome it is, because it's nowhere source, like it's not posted anywhere that AI can crawl. So if you have a killer email newsletter, don't stop doing that. But if you can go and take some of the context of what's in that email newsletter, go turn it into a blog post, go post that on LinkedIn, maybe post that whatever social platforms that you're on, repurpose that content. Kelly, you asked, what about Substack and Reddit? Girl, you're reading my slides. Yes, I will get into Substack and Reddit because those are like two really used sites. I'm going to go through this next section really quick, and then Kelly, I promise I will circle back to Substack and Reddit specifically. Okay, so when we're thinking about content tips, here's just a couple, like 6 quick tips that are helpful. Now, you want to answer prompt style questions. If any of you have been around for more than 2 seconds inside the Housing Link community, you will have heard Scott say this like all the time. But we want our answers to be clear. Now, sometimes I love to write. I love creative writing and I love puns. I love all of the things. So when I'm writing my titles, I used to get really like clever and like, almost like it would be found in a book. And then I'm like, sometimes the best way to say the car is for sale is the car is for sale. Sometimes we try to get so creative and different that we actually like end up shooting ourselves in the foot. Now, it sounds kind of boring, especially if you like writing, to be like, okay, my title is, the difference between Vantage score and FICO score. Like, that doesn't really sound creative. But the whole point of AI is it wants to provide an answer, the best answer to match the question that is being asked. And when you think about it, when we go to Google, or ChatGPT or wherever we're searching, most of the time we're searching in the form of a question. Am I right? How do I do this? What's the difference between this and this? The whole reason we're searching is because we have a question or a curiosity that we're looking in for an answer. So it only makes sense that our content should be structured in a way so that it mirrors the answer or the question that we're trying to be the answer for. So think about answer style questions. The next thing is, as we've talked about, we want to optimize for LLMs. So we want to make sure, for Perplexity, ChatGPT, again, Kelly, like you're talking about, making sure that it's for Substack and LinkedIn. Okay, this is another thing. John, you asked this at the beginning of the call before we started about the brand book. Yes, it is really important that we train AI to sound and talk like you. If you think of AI from a content creation standpoint, AI is like your junior copywriter, right? We're going to AI and we're like, help me write a LinkedIn post for this or a social media post for this, or help me respond to a client. Whatever you're asking it for in terms of writing on your behalf, that's a copywriter. We used to have to spend a lot of money and pay really experienced people to do the same thing that now AI is doing for us. But there is still a skill and an art to getting it to sound like us. So the example that I love to use is if you hired me and said, Katie, I want you to manage all of my marketing. Here's my name, go. Now, I'm pretty resourceful. I could probably go search for you and figure out who are you and what do you do. And I could probably get a decent amount there depending on how much public content you have available. But if you are a really good business owner, you would say, you're brand new. I just hired you and you're not cheap. So I want to make sure you perform the best that you can. So here's everything that you need to know about me. Here's my name. Here's how I got into the business. Here's why I'm good at what I do. Here's why I'm uniquely positioned to serve clients X, Y, and Z. Here are the types of clients that I am really good with. Here are the types of referral partners that I work with. Maybe you do builder business, or maybe you get a lot of lead generation from CPAs or estate attorneys. Like, the more information that you can provide to your specific AI to train it, now when you start saying, please help me write content, I want to write an article that speaks to the first time home buyer that I work with and how I'm uniquely positioned in Orange County with specific loan programs or whatever to help solve their problem. Now, AI can go pull from, oh, I understand. Here's what you taught me about your first time home buyer profile. And here's what I know about, you've been in the industry for 20 plus years and you're really experienced with first time home buyers. Great. Now I'm going to write content and take everything that you've provided to me and I'm going to filter through that. So when we train it on our voice and our point of view, it will write better content. One simple hack that you can do, take a couple of your performing emails or some social media captions, anything that you've written, you can take that, copy and paste that into your chat GPT and say, reverse engineer this example. Please tell me, what is this writing style? What is the tone? Blah, blah, blah. Now you can take that output and then say, please remember this. When you write content for me, please write in this voice, style, and tone. So that's one quick hack that you can do for training it. Okay, so the other thing we talked about, I'm going to pass through this because we've already talked about it, but you want to make sure that you're building depth into your content. So, don't, unless it's like, a quick Instagram reel that's going to have a 30-second half-life, like get the juice for the squeeze, especially if it's longer form content, your carousels, your videos, make sure that there's depth in what you're talking about. Anytime that you can add in a local geographical relevance, you're gonna get added leverage. So again, going back to, I need to scroll down my list so I'm not just calling on the same people. But going back to Daniel. So if you're writing a blog post, and I don't know where you live, unfortunately, but if you're writing a post, anytime that you can say, what $500,000 buys you in Bozeman, Montana, right now, that's going to be better than what $500,000 buys you today. Case in point, now when you start writing that, again, that's one more little breadcrumb that you're training and providing back to AI. So AI will be like, oh, Daniel, I know that name. He is a loan officer in Bozeman, Montana, and he specializes in this, and this article is relevant and timely. So, where you can add your geographical location, you don't always need to use your exact city. A lot of times we're in regional areas. So you could say, what this buys you in Orange County or in the greater Nashville area or in the Northeast, right? I had one client ask me recently, well, what if I, cover multiple states? Totally fine. Try to start winning with being the mayor of your local market first. So what is your town or your state, your county? And then start adding in content that can bridge out around that. A lot of us are licensed in multiple states. It's going to be really hard to be all things everywhere. So it's easier to start winning by your smaller area first and then add in content.
So that was I have a quick question. So
Sure.
do like county, I I have there's like six different cities. So
Uh-huh.
is it okay to do like county, or should I do it for each like individual city?
No, that's a great point. So I think when you're writing content, here's how I would approach it. I guess I'll just answer that. And again, I say all of this in that like we're still very much all learning and like figuring out how this works. But I would start with like, yes, you can say your county, but then, when you're training, like when you're asking AI to help you write this, and I'd say something like, I'm writing an article on this subject and I want to make sure that it's GEO rich. I'm located in this city and in this county and this state, right? Like, help me pull in GEO keywords, geographical keywords that will reinforce that. I'm just word vomiting, but I think you can write it to say, because you're in the Dallas kind of metro area, right? Correct. Okay. So
Georgia.
yeah, so maybe it's like, what going back to this example, it's like what $500,000 buys you in X county right now, right? Or maybe you say the Denver area. But then in the blog post itself, it's like, are you looking in Broomfield? Are you in Centennial? Are you in? So you're kind of pulling in a couple of those neighborhoods around, the Denver area, and then as you're writing more and more content, I would start, and this again, this goes a little bit deeper into the workshop that I'm going to do is like, okay, helping you guys build out what are some of some of the keywords that you want to consistently reinforce back to you. What are some of the geographical areas? And then I would add those in. So you don't always want to just say the exact county or just say Denver, but maybe, you start peppering in those different areas layered into your content.
Okay.
Um, okay. And then credibility boosters. Again, this was like if any time that you can back up claims with evidence. So going back to that realtor.com article. So if you're writing a, hey, I just read this article. Like I saw something yesterday. It was a article, or it was a piece put out by the National Association of Realtors that currently about 20% of realtors are using AI every single day. And like 32% of realtors polled said they've never used AI. Okay. So like maybe, you put a thought, an idea post around that. Like like, how do you interpret that? And again, not that you need to be talking about AI to your audience, but you get the point. So now you're bringing in an outside, hey, I was just reading an article by National Association of Realtors and it quoted X and Y. You link it in there. Here's my 2 cents on that, right? So now you're just bringing in outside data points and evidence that backs up the claim. So it's not just like, hey, Scott Nicholson just pulled this thought out of the air and, we're running with it. So there's credibility. Okay, now, Kelly, to answer your question about Reddit and Substack and all of the things, I recently looked at, and again, I'll provide you guys the links for this, but Ahrefs is a site. They do a lot of research with AI, and they scrubbed 9.6 million ChatGPT queries to figure out the top 100 most cited sources in the US, like US based sources, and then they did a global. But for this example, I'm just looking at the top 100 US websites. The number one cited source was Reddit. Okay. Now, I think that there is opportunity in Reddit and you could build a strategy. I don't have tactics for that today, but I would say pay attention or start listening. I think you're going to start hearing more and more about Reddit, especially correlated to AI. But when I scrubbed that list, Yelp ranked 70 and LinkedIn ranked 74. Now you might be thinking, okay, well, LinkedIn is way down the list. But what is in between number 1 and 74? Amazon, Walmart, Good Morning America, people.com. So when we're moving all of those sites, because we're not going to be cited on those or sourced on those sites, then LinkedIn was that next like most credible, like high ranking authority website where you can actually have control and put user generated content. So why I mention that is if you're not on LinkedIn, I'm telling you, there is tremendous opportunity on LinkedIn. I think it's largely been overlooked. I can tell you, I just dusted my profile off about 6 months ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's my new favorite platform. The conversations, the quality, the referrals have been amazing. And I think there's strategy, both specifically to outbound prospect for realtors, and then to put some thought leadership also to attract your clients. And it's a great place to park some of your content that AI will be able to crawl that's public. Now, Kelly, you specifically asked what to post for maximum GEO visibility. Again, reinforcing LinkedIn, Google My Business profile. That is a huge one. If you don't have that, I would make it high on your list to go get that. YouTube is another great place because it's also linked to Google. And then third-party sites like Substack, Quora, and Reddit. So if you're not familiar with Substack, it's like I don't know that I'd say it's a blog generator. It's a place to put like your thought leadership. So if you want to go put articles and content on there, it's different but similar to LinkedIn in that you can build a following, you can put stuff on there. I was on a call actually with Michael Thayer earlier this week, and we were talking about Substack specifically. And I was like, well, let's go see who is in mortgage on here. So I just put in the keyword mortgage on Substack. And I don't know, Michael, would you say there was like 10, maybe 15 people that had mortgage in their name or their title? So I'm like, wow, there's not a lot of competition right now. Like the barrier is really low. That is an added layer. So I'm not going to sit here and go tell you guys to go have all these third-party sites. Let's just be real. Housing Link isn't a great platform and a great place to start. So what I would recommend is if you're answering content Like, you have like you take a question and then you're going to create content around that answer, then I would build out a really great housing link presentation. So, for example, going back to the credit example, is, maybe the question is, can I buy a home if I have poor credit and student loans? Right? So build out an answer, like an actual helpful depth answer to that in housing link. Maybe you do a TCA, maybe you have, a video where you're talking about it and you have pull in some articles, whatever, however you're building that presentation that makes the most sense to you to help answer that question. Now I would take that housing link and I would break that down and repurpose it. I would go over to LinkedIn and I would go post, write a post about it. You can write an article, you can write a LinkedIn newsletter post about it. And then I'd say, hey, if you want to learn more about this, click here and direct them back to your housing link. So the cool part about the housing link is you can show up onto some of these third-party platforms and be kind of sneaky, like, hey, here's like an appetizer of my content. Got enough to like, train the system on what I'm wanting, but then come over here and go read the whole thing. And I was on a conversation recently, Scott, you can chime in if you're listening. Housing Link is indexing all of their pages. So I think more and more the goal is that those should be, hopefully popping up in search as well. Okay, really quick, I'm going to kind of skip over this, but the goal is that we want to listen to the questions that your audience is asking. So we want to start on like, okay, what is my audience asking in terms of content? Like, what do I talk about? I hear that all the time. Like loan officers are like, I just don't know what to talk about. Great. That's a really simple question and a really simple solution to that problem. I love to start by saying, what are the questions that your clients are asking you? Right? You guys really are the experts in your role. Don't overthink this when it comes to content. So start with, hey, did you have a client consult this week and maybe they were a first-time home buyer? Maybe it was a really technical strategy call where they're trying to figure out how to leverage equity and they're wanting to move up, but they don't want to ditch their, 3% interest rate. And, what is their problem and how are you solving that? So that's a source for your ask. Then figure out, okay, what's the story here? How can I create content around this? Because if I have one client that's thinking this, there's probably 20 behind them that are thinking the same thing. Okay, so now figure out how can you answer that. Then you want to go create the content. So you're appearing, repurpose that, and then the goal is that AI will amplify. It will help push the content out. I know we're running out of time and I kind of feel like I'm sprinting to the finish line. Here's the strategy that I use, and here's the strategy. So going back to that loan officer, for example, that got that referral on AI, I've been working with him for about 6 months now. And LinkedIn has been his one focus that he's really been doubling down on. And so it's the same thing. It's taking the core content. So take one idea. Again, what is the core question that maybe your client had, or maybe you saved a deal, maybe you had an objection and you lost a deal. Maybe it was an interaction with, a team member. Whatever the idea is, find something that's like, oh, I think I could talk about this. Okay, now when you're going into AI, the first thing that you're wanting to do is start with the core content. So like write a long form post, right? Then, okay, now you get that. In that same chat, you can ask it, okay, now can you help turn this idea into, a 2 to 3 minute video that I can create that reinforces this? Okay, great. Now, can you take that same idea and can you turn this into a LinkedIn article that I can post on my page? Okay, great. Now, can you take that same idea? You guys get the point of where I'm going with this. Can you turn this into an email that I can email out to my clients or my referral partners? And now, can you also give me a couple questions in a question answer format that I can post to my Google business page? Now, I know that's a fire hydrant and sounds really good in theory. Actually mapped out is a whole nother ball game. Which is why I think, I'll end with this. The big takeaway with all of the talk about GEO is the goal is that we want to build verified trust. We want to publish credible content, and then we need to stay consistent. If we're doing that, like anything that we're building, like if you're going to the gym or you're working on a goal, anything that you do over time, the compound reps add up. We know that. So that's the same with our content strategy. It's the same with optimizing our accounts. We need to get the strategy and then we need to get the repetition in place. So, if you guys want to dive deeper, because I feel like I literally just like talked so fast for an hour, trying to get through this. But if you guys want to dive deeper, I am going to be doing a two-part masterclass. You guys can scan the code. I'm going to do it a week after next so that we have enough schedule time. My goal is I want to keep this to 10 people to make it really small, like a workshop style. So if we get more than 10 people, I'll just replicate it so that, we're making room for everybody. But I'm going to do it in two 90-minute sessions. So the first session, we're going to focus on what I talked about is the core entity cluster. So what is that? It's if your profiles, if you did like an AI search of, who is Scott Nicholson, and maybe on LinkedIn, he is a certified mortgage planner. And then on YouTube, he's a loan officer. And then on his company website, he's a mortgage advisor. Yes, AI gets smart, but we want to have that core entity. What is the one sentence that like you want to train AI to always affiliate you with? So for example, Katie Shive is a Montana-based AI brand strategist that helps mortgage professionals build personal brands, not templates, right? So it's like, what is your name? What is your location? What is your role? Who is your audience? And what is your experience? So we're going to look at that. Then we're going to look at how do we take that, optimize it across your profiles? How do we affiliate keywords, geographical areas that you're at, getting that list? And then the second part is I'm going to go deeper into what I just sprinted through. How do we create content in a system? How do you actually brainstorm ideas, whether that's ChatGPT or Perplexity? How do you take a core idea? Then how do you go into your AI and say, break this into, one post, one email, one LinkedIn article, one video, one Instagram carousel, right? It's not that it's hard. It's just that there's a process in doing that. And I have found a way. I will tell you, I'm a busy mom with two small kids. I like, just like you guys, I don't love creating the content. A lot of times I feel like I'm drowning, but I have been putting this into a system where I can say, come up with one idea, and within about 30 minutes, I can create all of those pieces of content. And then it's a matter of just posting. And you could do that literally on a weekly. I'm not going to tell you you need to post every single day and be, your own marketing agency. But if you have the goal of like, let's create one core idea each week and then repurpose that, whether that's to your clients or your referral partners, then how do you get the most leverage out of that same idea and posting it in a couple different places? So that's what I'm going to do in that class. If you guys, let's see, Ben, you asked, can you throw a link in the chat for the class? Yes. Let me stop sharing and let me grab the link here. And then I'm going to stop and ask for questions. I can definitely stay on a little bit later. I just want to respect your time. If you guys need to bounce, that's great. If you have questions, come off chat.
I got a
Um,
question.